Hello there and welcome to another Why You Lost, or What Went Wrong as I originally called it. This replay was sent to me by a long-time community member and patron of this channel, Hermicky, so thanks to him for sending me this replay. He's the High Elves and he's facing off against the Wood Elves. And this is one of the Chaos Wastes maps, so it's nice, big and open, fairly flat, a little bit of elevation. Let's take a look at Hermicky's army first of all. So his front line is 4 units of Silverin Guard. Very good, strong holding power, anti-large, but a more expensive front line as front lines go. He's also got the Fireborn, a strong anti-large cav. He's got 2 units of light armor archers, just the 2. And then an Eagle Claw bolt thrower as well for a bit of artillery. Got the Arcane Phoenix, the magical pigeon, that could do some work with its fiery and magical damage. And then his Lord is an Archmage of Fire on an Eagle. So that is the main bulk of his army, all sat down here, just chilling out for now. But he also has a bunch of Vanguard deployed units. He's got 2 units of Illyrian Reavers in this bottom corner, and then 1 more on the other corner. Just Vanguard deploying, looking to get behind the enemy army and bring up a little maybe surprise attack, although this map is so open they're quite easy to see. For the Wood Elves, they've got Eternal Guard, surprise, surprise. No shields though, which is actually a little bit of a surprise. Against the High Elves, you probably do want the shields. He's got 5 units, 1 is shielded in the center. So fairly standard front line, and then a whole bunch of Glade Guard, lots of missiles, as you might expect from the Wood Elves. He's got some War Dancers, 2 units of those. Plenty of damage dealer power in those, could be useful against the High Elves. A couple of units of Wild Riders with shields, another staple of the Wood Elves army, very strong unit there. His Lord is just a Glade Lord on a Forest Dragon, so that's going to be a threat. And for a caster, he has a Spellsinger of Life, of course, because there pretty much is no other choice for the Wood Elves. So fairly standard Wood Elf army, to be honest. Eternal Guard frontline, lots of missiles, bit of Wild Riders. That's pretty much every Wood Elves army you'll ever see. For now though, Hermicky's still chilling out. He's got the ranged advantage with the artillery, so he has no real reason to rush up. Does have these Vanguard deployed units though to bring forward. They need to kind of move up soon and get in position to be ready when the main army attacks. They're moving up slowly a little bit for now. Some of the enemy stuff getting a little bit ahead of itself. The Lord, the caster, the Wild Riders. Hermicky trying to target the Lord with the artillery there. Getting a few shots in there. Not done too much damage. Arrow of Kernus coming in. But the Eagle Claw Bolt Thrower, it's one that's kind of, I don't know. I'm not a big fan of it because it can both be anti-large and anti-infantry. It has to obviously sacrifice something, so it's not an OP unit. And that thing is damage. It doesn't do a lot of damage very quickly compared to other artillery, which is fine. It can still do plenty of damage, but it has to do it over a long period of time. And with artillery being so hard to protect these days, that's kind of why I don't like it. But that's just me. That's just my personal feelings on it. He's changed to targeting the Wild Riders now. Probably a good idea because that Lord can be quite hard to hit on that dragon. Wood Elves player moving up though. He's coming for him. Got a lot of missiles. Hermicky bringing up his Vanguard deployed units. They may be a little bit behind though. They should probably be a little bit closer to the enemy army by now, because he's about to engage with the main army. This one in the far corner is a bit late to the party. He needs to catch up quick time. Eternal Guard do approach. Hermicky's still chilling. Not going to advance just yet. Still trying to make the most of his bolt thrower, but as you can see, not a lot of damage on the army at all from that bolt thrower. It's been firing for a while. He's trying to get the War Dancers now. Done a little bit of damage to them. But here comes the Eternal Guard. He's going to move up his Silverin Guard to engage them, which is a matchup they'll be absolutely fine with. They of course cost a fair bit more. Silverin Guard very tough. But are they a good pick for the situation? That's something we'll get to in a second. For now, the first big mistake for Hermicky here, he's sending in his Arcane Phoenix pretty much all by itself, with a lot of missiles around that can be pretty dangerous, although it is a fairly tanky unit. But there's really no reason for it to be attacking by itself because it has the tools to be supported by these Illyrian Reavers, which are unfortunately just a little bit far behind, so just a bit of miss micro here. But if they were up here attacking with the Phoenix, that would be perfect. And if these 2 Illyrian Reavers were also getting into it by now, they should really be up here pushing on these missiles, stopping them from firing, disrupting them, and causing problems as the front line is engaging. It should all be attacking together, because what this will do to your enemy is it'll force him to look this way. That gives him one direction to worry about. It'll make him look this way. That's 2 extra things to worry about over there, and he'll have this direction to worry about. So he's got to look in all these different directions at once, which is going to force him to micro quickly, which is where mistakes happen, which is part of the aim of attacking like this. Trying to coordinate and attacking from a lot of directions, it forces your enemy to micro a lot, which makes the game harder for him. Now let's talk about the Silverin Guard. A very strong unit, great for holding the line, but I don't think they really have a place here in this matchup too much. He's got 4 units of them, which is very expensive, and left him with a short front line, which has allowed this unit of single Eternal Guard to flank round and get around the side of him to get after his missiles. So having that short front line is costing him here. Luckily for him, he does have the Fireborn who are there to protect, but they're not really the ideal unit to be taking on spears, of course. And they're a very expensive unit to keep back to protect your missiles when they should really be off probably trying to get after Wild Riders and disrupting missiles. But because he's got so many expensive units, especially in that front line, he doesn't have enough to buy some cheap spears to hang back with. He's moving up here, going towards the Lord. Not actually sure if he's going to attack the Lord. Looks like he's just going to fly past him. Doesn't really look like he's charging. He's just kind of bumped into him. Oh, hello. Didn't see you there, Mr. Dragon. Shit. Now, this is kind of a missed opportunity for Hermicky. He could team up his Phoenix and his Lord to try and take out the Dragon in melee. It doesn't have a lot of armor, so they're a little bit squishy. It would be very risky, though, with all the missiles still around. So not necessarily a good idea right now, but that's what he could be doing, is he has that air superiority. Needs to get the pressure on these missiles. His Phoenix is just sitting here right now. This is probably just a micro error again. And these Cavs still not engaging. They should really be here right now. Hermicky did say to me when he sent me this replay that it's probably just micro, and he's aware that his micro wasn't good in this game, and he even named the game Bad Battle. So he knows he didn't do very well in this one, which is probably why he sent it to me. But I think there is more here than just the lack of micro that is the problem, which is why I chose this replay. It highlights one of the big things that a lot of new players struggle with, and that is kind of the coordinating of your army to all attack together. You can't send in one part of your army and then another part, and then another part later on. They need to all come in together and work together. If not, they get picked off one by one by a full army. These Fireborn here were left fighting these spears, which has hurt them a lot. They've lost 2/3 of their health fighting Eternal Guard. They did just get a breath attack, which has hurt them as well, but that is good value for money for the Eternal Guard. Those Fireborn have lost so much health just fighting one spear unit, which obviously is a really bad matchup for them. He would have been better off sacrificing the archers because they cost so much less. And he could have even sent in the archers to attack and then cycle charged them with the Fireborn, so teamed up on them. Over here, the Reavers have been taken out. They needed some support dealing with those Wild Riders. The Phoenix maybe could have done that. Over here, they're getting into the missiles a little bit. He's broken one unit of missiles. He's got some Illyrian Reavers routed that will come back there. So he did have the 2 units of Wild Riders to deal with, which is why the Fireborn needed to be up there, because they would have just wiped them out pretty easily. But the other big problem with Hermicky's army is his build overall. It's not really well designed for taking on the Wood Elves. The army is a bit too small. He's got too many very expensive units. He's got that expensive front line. He's got the Fireborn. He's got the Arcane Phoenix. So having all of those is going to make it harder to put money elsewhere, meaning your army is going to be pretty small, which obviously comes with its own set of problems. Flamestorm over here. This is a spell I don't really like, these random vortexes. They're kind of hit or miss. They could just completely go the wrong way and not hit anything, or they could even go the wrong way and take out your units. They're too risky for my taste. This is just me. Some people might like them. They certainly can do damage if they land well, but why mess around with that RNG element when you could just pick a spell that will do what it says on the tin? Flaming Sword of Ruin, some kind of buff, Fireball even, although that could miss. But we can see here, Hermicky just hasn't had enough pressure on all the missiles, and they've been able to sit there blasting away. Still got his Eagle Claw here firing away. It's only got 23 kills though. I'm not sure what it's been shooting at. It seems to still be in infantry firing mode, but it hasn't really done a lot. Hence what I say, not a great artillery for my taste. Something coming in here, a burning head. He's going to get a nice burning head here, going through these 2 units, slightly catching his own unit maybe. But another one of those spells that can kind of go either way. Bringing in the Ember Storm, or whatever it's called here. Didn't really need it here. Maybe could have found a better place to do this, perhaps on this unit. Those 2 units were already routed. This one could have been a good shot for that. Or maybe these Wild Riders that have just jumped on his missiles, although might have been a bit of a sacrifice of the missiles. But yeah, so Hermicky's micro, a problem here, but that's fine. That's kind of normal for beginner players. Got to learn that. It'll take some time. But the bigger problem here is really in his build overall. It's kind of indecisive. It's half a defensive army and half a rush army. So it's hard to know exactly what his game plan was, and he seemed to be a bit too in the middle to really be effective against the Wood Elves. His Lord got netted and sniped down somewhere and killed off, resulting in this valiant defeat for Hermicky. A good effort, but I think he slightly defeated himself before this even began with his build. So we'll talk about that in a second. Let's just take a look at some kills. You can see most of the work for the Wood Elves there was done by the Wild Riders, which is why it's so imperative to try and take them out early. They're very expensive, so people don't really have too many of them. He had the tool to take him out. He had the Fireborn. He had the Arcane Phoenix. He had some missiles. Those are also good against Wild Riders because they don't have a lot of armor. You can see his Silvering Guard did okay. They held fine, but they didn't get a lot of kills or take many people out. And not a lot of those archers got taken down. So this is Hermicky's build. Let's take a look at it, dissect it, see what we could have done instead. So Archmage of Fire on an Eagle. I think this is a perfectly fine Lord choice. You've got the Eagle, so she can stay out of trouble. You've got the Fire, which is useful against the Wood Elves. Got the 2 abilities on, that's all good. The 2 spells, as I mentioned earlier, not really my kind of spells of choice, especially Flamestorm, as it is so random and could potentially hurt your own faction. Cost 13 magic as well, so not really a cheap spell to pull off that one, which could mean a fairly big waste of magic. The Burning Head, not a bad spell choice against the Wood Elves because they lack armor and have those wood units, but again, not one I'd really choose. I probably prefer something like one of these two, maybe Flaming Sword of Ruin, always a good spell. Fireball can be useful as well, but pretty good Lord choice overall. Maybe the only other thing to take would have been this item. The Book of Hoeth greatly improves the recharge rate, so that'll just give you more magic to play with basically, and it only costs 131, so not very expensive for magic that could definitely do plenty of damage. So the front line was the big problem here. The Silvering Guard, very expensive, made a very small front line. He ended up getting flanked because of it. And honestly, they're just not really required in this matchup. They're great for holding a line, they're great for taking down large stuff, but those things aren't really needed against a Wood Elf front line, which is probably Eternal Guard. They have very low weapon strength and very low melee attack, so damage output isn't really on their agenda. They are armor piercing, which makes them a little bit more dangerous, but still, High Elf Spearmen would have held them just fine. But really, it wasn't in Hermicky's best interest to have a long drawn out fight because he was so outnumbered by the missiles. He needed to break through the front line quick. Either way, these 2 light armor archers are a fine pick against the Wood Elves, but there just maybe wasn't enough of them to really be made good use of. They were teamed up with the Eagle Claw Bolt Thrower, which gave him a bit of backline firing power, but that probably wasn't enough against the Wood Elves. This is where his kind of half and half army comes into play. The Silvering Guard and all his ranged units are the kind of defensive side of his army. And then he's got the 3 units of Illyrian Reavers. These are a fine pick, they're nice and fast, they can run down those archers. They don't have much armor or a shield, so they do have to be careful of the missiles, but they can run down and disrupt all of the archers. And then you have the Fireborn. Not a unit that necessarily has a ton of use against the Wood Elves. Obviously, it's got the fire damage, good against those treekin, good against the treemen, but cavalry isn't great against those units, and they don't have armor piercing. So it may have been better off with just some regular Dragon Princes to save a bit of money. These can do fantastic cycle charging infantry, as it's also light on the armor, or you could have got 2 units of Silver Helms with shields pretty much for this price. So that'll just increase the size of your army, which is very useful against the Wood Elves. The Arcane Phoenix, a nice pick against the Wood Elves, I think. You've got the fire damage, which could help with tree units, and magical damage, which could help with Wild Riders. It's also, of course, very mobile and fantastic for disrupting missiles. And it's got the Ember Storm as well, so lots of potential from this unit. A useful pick. So that was Hermicky's army. Maybe he'll let us know in the comments why he chose the units that he did and what his game plan was. But like I mentioned, he seemed like he was kind of in 2 minds about what he was doing. He has the Silvering Guard, the Archers, and the Bolt Thrower that all suggest, I'm playing defensive. And then he's got the 3 Illyrian Reavers, the Fireborn, and 2 flying units, which all kind of suggest, okay, I'm actually going to play quite aggressive and I'm going to push on you with all this cav and flying. Which is kind of what he did. He stayed put and played a bit defensive with his archers, but did push on him with the cav. But I think the best way to fight Wood Elves is to either do one or the other. You either commit fully to rushing them and trying to overrun them so their missiles don't get time to fire, or you try to outrange them and outgun them by bringing more missiles than they do. So let's see what we can do to this build to make it a little bit more viable against the Wood Elves. First order of business, get rid of those Silvering Guard. They're too expensive and we don't really need them for this Wood Elf matchup. So let's build towards the rush plan, right? We're going to go heavy rush here. We're going to bring 4 units of Rangers. These will be able to beat the Eternal Guard. They should beat Dryads, maybe. Not 100% sure on that. They'll need some help if they fight War Dancers or Wildwood Rangers. Archers, these 2, let's get rid of those, and we're going to bring instead a couple of Lothan Seaguard. Lothan Seaguard are fantastic against the Wood Elves because of that silver shield. They can outgun most of the Wood Elf archers. Wood Elves are a glass cannon. They can put out lots of damage, but they can't take it. So if Lothan Seaguard engage them in a one-on-one shootout, the Lothan Seaguard will be fine because they've got that silver shield. The Illyrian Reavers, I think, are fine. We can keep those in. They're good for harassing and pushing. The Dragonborn, no, the Fireborn. It'd be better if we had the Dragonborn. He could just shout everyone to death. But they're too expensive, so instead we're going to get 2 units of Silver Helms with shields. Now these can push on the archers, or they could take on the Wild Riders. If they take on Wild Riders though, they might want some help. This is where I'll adjust my magic around, so I'm going to get rid of these 2 spells. I'm keeping the Lord the same, but I'm instead going to bring the Flaming Sword of Ruin, which gives magical damage. So if I put that on the Silver Helms when they're fighting the Wild Riders, they'll be able to bypass the physical resistance of the Wild Riders. I'll also take Fireball, because that's just a useful spell in case there's any flying units or any wood units. Nice to have. 3 Illyrian Reavers, 2 Silver Helms. We'll keep the Arcane Phoenix. Again, good for pushing those archers. We'll get rid of the stupid-ass Bolt Thrower. We've now got 1,200 left. That's a good chunk of money. What should we get? We could maybe get some war lions. They could be useful. Again, good anti-infantry. They could munch down archers. You could instead get some archer cav, some skirmish cav. They could be good for softening up wild riders, just blasting them because they don't have a lot of armor. Maybe could get some dragon princes if you wanted to. Maybe a white lion chariot might be nice. A chariot could be good because it's very difficult for the wood elves to stop. They don't have many high mass units. So that'll be able to charge around. A little bit too expensive. There we go. So again, just another unit to harass those missiles or to charge through infantry. Could go after any of the more heavy units like the treekin. But there we go. I think that's a fairly decent rush army for the High Elves facing the Wood Elves. You can see that our plan is very clear. We're not making any qualms about going for defensive. We've got 2 units of missiles, but they're going to move up with the front line and just stay behind them and protect their back. So it's all going to kind of be together. So we've got the 4 Rangers that could take on Eternal Guard. We've got the 2 Lothan Sea Guard that can shoot missiles or protect the rear of the Rangers because they might be a little bit exposed from the back if all of our cav is off pushing on the enemy. We've got our 3 Illyrian Reavers, which could be used as Hermicky did. Just got to bring them in at the same time as the rest of the army. And then the rest of the stuff can pretty much just charge in and flank. You've got the 2 units of cav, the chariot, and the phoenix. These can all come in together. The Silver Helms could maybe try and bait the wild riders into a fight, and then you can use that flaming sword of ruin to give them the advantage. So you should be able to overrun them fairly comfortably. But I know what you're going to say. This army looks pretty crazy and there's a lot of cav and it's going to be very micro intensive. Well, you might be right, but we can simplify it. Let's get rid of a lot of the different kinds of units. We can bring more cav, so we're just going to bring 5 units of Silver Helms. And then we still got a lot of money left. We could just bring more Lothan Sea Guard. There you go. There's a simple rush army. You've got the Rangers to attack their front line. The Lothan Sea Guard can stay behind and protect the flanks and keep shooting any of their missiles. And then you've got a whole bunch of Silver Helms, which should have no problem pushing on all their missile units. You just got to find the gaps, find the holes. You can even charge infantry with those as well. And we still got 500 left over. So there's a very simple High Elf army against the Wood Elves that is much less micro-intensive than the first one I just showed you. But now let's say we want to go full on range. So we're going to bring 5 units of Lothan Sea Guard. As I said, they'll beat Glade Guard no problem. They'll be able to blast up Deepwood Scouts. We'll bring some Sisters as well. They've got that magical and armor piercing and fire damage, so they can just be good against everything strong that the Wood Elves have. We're only going to bring 1 though as they're so expensive. Bring a couple of cheap archers, light armor, and then our front line is just going to be 4 units of Spearmen. We can bring some Lothan Sea Guard up if we need a little bit of help with the front line if it's not long enough, because they'll be able to take on Eternal Guard just fine. We could change our Lord up if we wanted to. You could maybe try Imric if you want to bring some fire, put him on his dragon. He could be pretty useful if there happens to be tree units. But Alariel is probably one of the best picks for the High Elf still. Whack her on an eagle. She can keep herself safe from any flying units and get away from range nice and quick. We'll give her Arcanum Forging and Earthblood so she can get those heals going. Star of Avalorn as well. Very strong spell for the heals. Stave of Avalorn as well for the recharge rate. Nice simple Lord, bit of heals, just got to be careful with her so she doesn't get stuck into any fights or get shot down, and she'll be just fine. But we've got plenty of holding in the front line and in the Lothan Sea Guard. Lots of missiles just to absolutely blast the crap out of the enemy. Still got 2,000 funds though. I'm going to bring some Dragon Princes, great for charging infantry in the face or getting after those missiles if we need to. Maybe a little bit of Skirmish Cav as well, soften up the Wild Riders that may try and come around our flanks and get after all our missiles. We'll be able to pester them, so there we go. Still got a bit of money left. That'll do. So there we go. That could be a ranged build to bring against the Wood Elves. So you can hopefully see from the Rush army and from this ranged army that we're committing to one plan or the other. Rush or ranged. Which do you like? Which do you want to go for? Pick one and go all in on it. Don't go half and half. I don't think it's going to work great against the Wood Elves. So there you go. What you could do as the High Elves against the Wood Elves. Thanks again to Hermicky for sending me the replay. If you'd like to send me a replay of a battle you've lost and you want to know why the hell you lost, you can direct message it to me on Discord. Link is in the description. It has to be a recent battle though. If it's on an older version of the game, it won't work properly. So it needs to be since the game got updated, maybe like a week ago. So if it's any older than that, it's not going to work. It'll still allow you to play the replay, but it won't play out correctly. The battle will just happen differently. It'll start off the same, but as the battle goes on, you'll start to notice it's not the way that you played it. So they're no good if they're old. Thanks for watching, people. Hope you've enjoyed this. See you in the future.